Hello and welcome to part 10 of the Realistic Head Mickey tutorial. This is David Ward, and last I left you, we had finished clone painting on the texture map and gotten all the angles all set. And in the meantime, let me start over there. In the meantime, I went into Photoshop and kind of cleaned the image up a little bit. So let me reload that in here. You can see it helped quite a bit. I got did the clone painting and healing brush tool there on the underside of the neck, got that cleaned up a little bit, and then lightened up that dark eyebrow area. It looks a little dark still yet, but I'll just leave it alone. So that's what I did in the between times. So now let's go in and go to our multi-resolution. We're going to sculpt in some extra detail here. So let's go ahead and turn this back to solid. I guess it is solid, but we're going to go back to, let's go to sculpt mode this time. And we can go ahead and collapse this window over here. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag the little diagonal lines there and just drag that together. Get rid of that window. And now for the multi-res to work well, you need to turn off your subsurf. And then you will subdivide your multi-res. Just a couple of times. I find to get really good detail, you need to go about to 5 actually, and that can start eating a lot of resources. So you be careful. If you don't have a real powerful computer, you don't want to go that high. And also one thing, just doing a head by itself is better than doing a whole body as far as this goes, because you don't have to subdivide that much polygons and vertices. You only have to do from the neck up. So that helps out quite a bit. Okay, so we got our sculpt tool here. First thing I want to do is go ahead and put in some wrinkles. But I'm going to use the clay strips here. And we're going to just do a little bit of a build-up, just rough skin texture there. I'm going to make my brush quite a bit smaller, and let's set the strength quite a bit lower. Let's make that about 0.3 instead of 0.5. So I'm going to come in here and just gently start just adding some general shape to the skin, some texture to it. Just basically kind of going over maybe the direction that the muscles are going in his face here, just to give it a little bit of, non-smoothness. And since I probably have go to options, and options, where is that at? Grease pencil, no, tools. Let's go all the way down. There we go, symmetry. Yeah, I have the X symmetry turned on, so it's doing both sides at the same time. So that'll save you a little bit of time if you're going to be pretty symmetric about your stuff here. So let's paint in here some forehead wrinkles, or at least the base for them. Then we can come back in with the crease tool and actually add those wrinkles in there. So this might be, if you want to study up on the anatomy of the face and how all the muscles will look, feel free. That might help you get a nice sub-base texture there. Let's go ahead and change our strength up a little bit. I'm not seeing a whole lot of difference. Let's go ahead and put that back to 0.5. And then maybe make the size of the brush a little bigger. There we go. Maybe that's too much. 0.4. There we go. That'll work. Okay. So you might be seeing a lot of detail come in, but to be honest, once you turn this into a UV map, or excuse me, a normal tangent map, a lot of this deep detail is not going to be visible, so it kind of helps to exaggerate it just a little bit. So we'll just come in here, and no one has perfectly smooth skin, and if they do, they probably have makeup on. So our guy here is not wearing any makeup, so let's just give him some, not rough skin per se, just not smooth skin. And maybe kind of just a hint of some tendons and things back here. And I know it's looking a little rough. People's skin is typically a little smoother than this, but we'll come back in and polish that up with the smooth tool once we get it all set up the way we want. And he had some pretty deep smile lines here along the sides of his eyes, crow's feet as some people call them. So we'll just start preparing for that. Maybe down here. And then obviously a smile line that we had to get rid of there by his mouth. It's kind of looking like an old man with all these wrinkles, but That's okay. Set our radius down. Let's try to get a little bit of detail in the lip area here. I'm going to go ahead and subdivide one more time. And that'll give us a little bit more elbow room for some detail there. Come in here. Just paint some lines there on the lips just so they're not quite smooth. Let's undo that a little bit. Okay, so that's looking all right for the most part. Sometimes when I'm just goofing with the sculpt tools, I'll just sculpt like an old man with a lot of wrinkles. And some of my friends were like, why do you always sculpt old men? I was like, well, it's fun to do all those wrinkles. Put all that extra detail in there. Okay, so we got the base wrinklage, if that's a word. It's like Peter Dinklage. Micky wrinklage. So I'll just get a few more little details in. There was the front of the ear. And now we can grab the smooth tool and maybe set its strength down a little bit higher. Strength down the radius a little bigger. And kind of just come in here and knock some of the harshness off of some of these ridges and areas. So if you got the patience and time, you can spend hours putting all this extra detail in with the sculpting tools. It's kind of like ZBrush. ZBrush has it's a little bit more dynamic, and you can add a lot more detail for less bandwidth for your computer. It doesn't need as much RAM and things, but you can do almost as good here with the sculpting tools in Blender. They're even better because they're free. If some of these softwares weren't so expensive, I think they'd probably sell a lot more of them. But you need to take a page out of Blender's book. Offer stuff for free, or at least a lot cheaper, and you'll have a bigger fan base. I'm sure they have a pretty good sized fan base as is, but it could be even bigger if they just lower their prices a little bit, in my opinion. Okay, so we got those kind of smoothed out. Let's grab the crease tool right there. Now we can come in and actually add some wrinkles in. So let's set the radius down a little bit. I'm going to let's try 50, and we'll leave the strength as is, and that looks about right. So we can come in here and just add some nice subtle wrinkles. Maybe even a little smaller, a little stronger. Add that grin area that he had in his mouth, on the side of his mouth. Undo that a little bit. If you get in a little closer, you can get a little bit better looking wrinkles. The further you are out, it just looks like a valley, or a ridge rather than a wrinkle. So if you get in there real tight and nice, you can get some better looking stuff. And no worries if you get too many wrinkles, you can just use that sculpt tool again. Okay, let's go beside his eye there. Make that a little deeper in there, maybe. A little bit more wrinkles. Lots of wrinkles on the eyelids. Probably the most scrunched up and then smoothed out skin of your whole body. So you're always blinking or keeping your eyes open, or when you're asleep they're closed. That's probably the most flexible piece of skin, and also the most one prone to getting wrinkles on it. Okay, so that's looking alright. Let's go ahead and grab the smooth, clean some of that back up. And then down here a little bit. Okay, so one thing you can also do with the crease tool, aside from putting wrinkles, you can go the opposite way, instead of subtract right here, you say add. You can come in here and actually add better definition around certain things, like the lips, for example. Might be a little too much. Well, you know, let's leave it. And then I want to add a little filter area. A little place under his nose there. Good. And let's go ahead and add a little bit of a bit better ridge there around his nostrils. Like so. Okay, so that's looking all right. I think that'll do for the general sculpting area. Now, while we do have all the wrinkles and everything, his skin is still really smooth. So let's try to add a little bit of roughness to it. The way I'm going to do that is let's go ahead and let's grab the clay strips tool again. And this time, I'm going to come over here under the textures tab. And right now, if you go to materials first and then textures, you're creating textures for the material. But we want to come to the sculpting tools. So then we go to the textures and we'll create a new one. And I'm going to say clouds. And this will just basically be noise. So you want to set the size way down. About, let's try 0.03. It'll just be a nice staticky looking type of thing. So now over here, under under texture, it'll let me expand it. Okay, it's already set in there. So now when we paint with this clay strips tool, you'll be able to see we're actually, so we'll have to higher the resolution of the base. So let's subdivide one more time, and 5 should be good. Hopefully your computers are going to be strong enough to do this. Take a little bit, take it a second or two to subdivide that. As soon as this finishes, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Don't want it crashing on me. Okay, and also the more subdivisions you have, the larger your Blender file is going to be, because it's still keeping track of all those polygons and vertices that it's adding. Okay, so, excuse me, once you get that set, you can go ahead and start painting in, and you can see that rough texture that we've got now. So, you can go crazy with this and just add all this extra detail to his skin. All these pores and just general rough skin. Just paint that in. If you zoom in real tight, you get smaller detail. And it's kind of like with the crease tool. The further you are out, the more it kind of just you know, it makes it like a bigger crevice rather than adding the detail like you might want. So we'll just come in here and oops, a little too much in there. Let's come a little closer. And on the lips as well. You can see it's doing it on both sides at the same time, so you can kind of get an idea. It's actually starting to look more like skin rather than just a smooth plastic wax. Let's do on the nose. The problem with using the clay strips is it adds a ridge with it as well. The best way, you could use just the general sculpting draw, but that wants to add a ridge as well. But let's try just playing with that. It's not quite as a harsh ridge. So what we can do is just make it a little bit bigger and set the strength down some. Maybe way even further. About maybe let's try 0.15, see what that looks like. Yeah, that'll work. A little more subtle. So we'll just do that. All those pores on the skin of his nose. And around the outside. Inside here. Pretty much just all over. You could go ahead and use that same texture as a bump map, but it'll all be uniform. So doing it this way, you have more control over kind of the layout, the directions that these are going to be going. We can come back in here and use that wrinkle tool to give them some better wrinkles across his forehead. Since he has a lot of whiskers on his on the texture map, a lot of this detail down in this area and this beard line is not going to be that visible. But we'll go ahead and add a little bit on there anyways. And of course his ears. Ears typically tend to be relatively smooth, but they'll also have some little minor imperfections here and there. I'll just add just a little bit, just to add some to it. Okay. Another thing that'll help with this is if I go ahead and jump over the materials and set the specular level way down. Right now it's 0.5 intensity. I'm going to set that to 0.1 and then set the hardness to probably about 20. So that looks a little more skin-like, a little more clay rather than just a shiny plastic. So that'll help things look a little better. So we'll come in here, come around the back of the neck. Some nice skin texture there. So this back of the head. Don't have to do a lot down there or up around the back of his head. Unless you're leaving him bald, then you might want to. Even with the hairline, it'll still have a few skin wrinkles here and there. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good, decent base sculpt there. So what we can do now is go ahead and save. And what we want to do is we don't want to render this because that would take forever. And you know me, I don't like rendering to take any longer than it needs to. So what we'll do now is convert this sculpting into a tangent normal map, which is basically a bump map. So we won't actually have to have all this extra polygons detail. We can fake it with this tangent normal map. So if I can grab that, there we go. So yeah. Okay, so let's go to the UV image editor on this window again. Tab into edit mode just so we have our UVs here. And we're going to create a new image again this time. This time you can make it 4096 again if you'd like. I'm just going to go to 2048 this time. 2048. Okay. And go ahead and use color grid. It doesn't matter really at all at this point because it's going to, when you bake out the tangent normals, it's going to completely cover everything. So won't have to worry about that. Okay, so now tab back to regular mode as soon as it lets me. We've got that tangent normal. We have to, or the sculpting. If we set the preview, or we're actually sculpt mode, just go back to object mode, and you'll need to set the preview at least to 1 for this to work. So it's gonna, the base mode 1 is basically what it will look like with a subsurface. So that's the base that we want it to map onto, and we want it to map from the sculpt resolution, which is 5. So we're going to be projecting from 5 down to 1. So you need to have the preview set to 1 and the sculpt to 5, and the render to 5, I guess. So now we go over to the render tab there, scroll all the way down to the bottom to the bake area, expand that out, and under bake mode, change that to normals, and go ahead and bake from multi-res. And that should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the T button to hide that toolbar. And let's go ahead and hit the N button to hide the properties panel there. And I'll zoom out here so you can kind of see it at work. So now what it's going to do is going to, like I said, it's going to take that 5 layered, or the 5 resolution sculpt map and bake it down to this low resolution base. So we'll go ahead and hit bake. And boom. It goes a lot faster than it used to when they first started making this bake option. So you can see all that extra detail and everything in there. Okay, so good to go. Let's go ahead and save this image as. And now instead of Micky, oops, go back up. Instead of Micky texture map, I'm going to say Micky normal map. Okay, and also make it a JPEG. You don't have to make it a JPEG if you don't want to, but I prefer that. Make sure you set the quality all the way to 100%, 1.0, 100%. Save as image. And now we can go ahead and turn off the multi-res. I'm going to go ahead and save it just so it's still in the file. But once I get to part 11, I'll probably go ahead and get rid of that just so it makes a smaller file size. But we'll go ahead and turn on our subsurf level 1 there. And now we go to our materials tab. We can go ahead and start getting that normal map set up. So materials tab, and then go to your textures. And when you first create this texture with the texture painting, it creates a blank texture there in the first slot. So we don't need that. I'm going to go ahead and delete. Then go ahead and grab that diffuse color. And let's name that one Micky texture. Okay. Go ahead and bump that up to the top just for aesthetically pleasing layering there. And now I'm going to go to this next tab, say new. And it's going to be image or movie. And we're going to choose that untitled. Let's go ahead and title it Micky normals. Okay. And go ahead and collapse that. And mapping was going to be UV. We want to make sure we go to the UV map. And then image mapping. Let's see, image sampling. Now this is one thing I found makes a big difference in the amount of detail it shows on this normal map. What you're supposed to do, since it's a normal map, is you turn on normal map right there. And then obviously you want to go down to influence and turn off color and set to normal geometry there. So if we go to our texture settings, you can see what that's going to look like. But if we go back to turn on in, that's how it's going to map on there. Perfectly fine. But we go to shading and we go back to GLSL. That'll give us the option to have all the shadows and everything. So now we can get rid of some of these light sources that are creating this all around shadow. So we'll just delete those, and tell you what, I'm going to move this one over to this side just so we have some ambient light over there. And let's knock it down to about 0.5. Then this one, we'll leave it at 1. Okay, so now right now you can see some of those wrinkles and things. They're not real obvious, but that's, like I said, that's because we turn the normal map on. If we turn that off, you can see that those wrinkles show up a lot better, or worse, depending on your point of view. They're really detailed now. So we might want that. But that's as high as the normal map will go, just barely visible. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. There's also a few things you can do under here on the bump mapping. If we turn that back to just standard bump map, you can change some of the settings here. Medium quality, best quality. It'll give you better bumps. So I'm going to go to best quality there. And I'm going to say I don't want the wrinkles quite that deep. So let's go to, let's say 0.5 is usually still too high. 0.25 maybe. Once we turn on the subsurface scattering, a lot of this will disappear as well. So we can just kind of play with that as we go. But we'll get into that in part 11. So for part 10, we got the sculpting and then baked out the tangent normal map. Make sure I go ahead and save that. Normal map JPEG, good to go. All right, so that's going to be it for part 10. Like I said, in part 11, we'll get in and actually start working on the material, getting a nice skin tone with the subsurface scattering. And I guess we need to go ahead and do the inside of the mouth. I kind of forgot about that. We need to add some texture mapping to that, but we can do that in Photoshop. So in any case, that's going to be it for part 10. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in part 11.